Nathan Miller blended into the crowded hallways of Westridge High School like a single drop in a vast ocean. Average height, average grades, average life. Nothing about him stood out in the busy halls filled with students rushing between classes. That's why he couldn't understand why the alien exchange student couldn't stop staring at him. Zarlak towered over the human students. Her blue skin caught the fluorescent lights in strange ways, sometimes seeming to glow from within. 4 iridescent eyes blinked independently of each other, and the thin membrane covering her neck fluttered when she spoke English through her translation device. She came from Proxima Centauri, the closest exoplanet to Earth, and she was the first alien most students had ever seen up close. "She's watching you again," whispered Olivia during third period biology. Olivia had been Nathan's best friend since they were 5, and she never missed a detail. "That's 3 weeks straight now." Nathan kept his eyes fixed on his textbook. "Maybe if I ignore her, she'll stop." "Not likely. What did you do to freak her out?" "Nothing. I've barely said 2 words to her since she arrived. When Earth made first contact with the Proxians 2 years ago, the whole world changed overnight. The aliens weren't hostile, just curious. Their technology was only slightly more advanced than Earth's, but their biology was fascinatingly different. The cultural exchange program that brought 12 Proxian students to Earth was meant to build bridges between the species. Somehow, one of those 12 had ended up at Nathan's unremarkable suburban high school. And for some reason, she couldn't take her 4 strange eyes off him. In the cafeteria, Nathan sat with his back to the wall where Zarlak always ate alone. She had her own special food, strange packets of nutrient gel that smelled like cinnamon and salt. The other students had initially crowded around her with endless questions, but the novelty had worn off after a few weeks. Now, most people treated her like just another student, except she wasn't. "Maybe she likes you," Olivia suggested, taking a bite of her sandwich. "An alien crush? That's ridiculous," Nathan scoffed, but his eyes darted over his shoulder. Sure enough, Zarlak quickly looked away when their eyes met. "I don't think aliens get crushes," said Kyle, dropping his lunch tray beside them. "My dad works at the embassy. He says Proxians are super logical, no emotions like we have." "Then why is she always staring?" Nathan asked. Kyle shrugged. "Maybe you look like something from her planet. Maybe you smell weird to her." "Thanks a lot," Nathan muttered. Later that day in chemistry class, Mr. Ramirez assigned lab partners. Nathan's stomach dropped when he heard his name paired with Zarlak's. As he reluctantly made his way to her table, he noticed how she stiffened, her blue skin paling slightly. "Hi," he said, sliding onto the stool beside her. "Guess we're working together." Zarlak's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in sequence. Her translator device made a soft whirring sound before she spoke. "Yes. Hello, Nathan Miller." Her voice sounded musical, even through the electronic filter of the translator. What Nathan didn't understand was that Zarlak wasn't watching him out of curiosity or attraction. She wasn't even watching him out of disgust or fear of humans. She was watching him because something about him terrified her. And she had very good reasons to be afraid. Rain drummed against the gym's high windows on Tuesday afternoon. The weather had forced Coach Dias to move their usual outdoor track practice inside. 30 students jogged in circles around the polished wooden floor, their sneakers squeaking with each step. Nathan ran at his own pace, not too fast and not too slow. He noticed how Zarlak kept to the outer edge of the track, maintaining distance from the other students. The alien moved with surprising grace despite her 7-foot height and unusual 3-jointed legs. "Pick up the pace, people," Coach Dias shouted, clapping her hands. 2 more laps. Nathan sped up slightly, his breathing steady. He didn't notice his left shoelace had come untied until his foot caught it mid-stride. The world tilted sideways as he stumbled, arms flailing. He crashed directly into Zarlak, who had been carefully keeping space between herself and the human students. They collided with a surprised oof from Nathan and a musical chirp of alarm from Zarlak. Both tumbled to the floor in a tangle of limbs, human and alien. Nathan's elbow struck the hardwood, sending a jolt of pain up his arm. "Sorry. I'm so sorry," he gasped, quickly rolling away and scrambling to his feet. Several students had stopped running to watch. Zarlak remained on the ground, her 4 eyes locked on Nathan. The normal vibrant blue of her skin had drained away, leaving her a pale, almost white color. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even seem to breathe. Nathan extended his hand to help her up. "Are you okay? Did I hurt you?" Zarlak didn't respond. She simply stared, completely frozen in place. 10 seconds passed. 15. The other students formed a loose circle around them. "Give her some space," Coach Diaz said, pushing through the crowd. "Alien physiology is different. She might be in shock." Just as the coach reached for her phone to call the school nurse, Zarlak suddenly moved. Her skin slowly returned to its normal blue. She ignored Nathan's outstretched hand and stood up on her own, her movements stiff and mechanical. Without a word, she turned and sprinted from the gymnasium, moving faster than any human could run. "What did you do to her?" Kyle asked, nudging Nathan's shoulder. "Nothing. I just tripped and fell into her." "Maybe it's a cultural thing," Olivia suggested. "Maybe physical contact is offensive to her people." Coach Diaz blew her whistle. "Show's over. Back to running." The next morning, Nathan spotted Zarlak at her locker before first period. He approached slowly, wanting to apologize properly. "Hey, about yesterday," he began. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Zarlak's body went completely rigid. Her skin paled again, and her eyes widened to perfect circles. She looked like a statue, perfectly still except for a slight trembling in her hands. After several uncomfortable seconds, she snapped out of it, grabbed her books, and hurried away without saying a word. This strange pattern continued throughout the day. Whenever Nathan entered a classroom, Zarlak would freeze in place. If he walked past her in the hallway, she would go rigid until he passed. It was as if she had some kind of defense mechanism that activated only around him. By lunchtime, other students had noticed. "Dude, what did you do to the alien?" asked Ben from the baseball team. "She acts like you're radioactive or something." Nathan shook his head, watching as Zarlak sat alone at the far end of the cafeteria. For a brief moment, their eyes met across the room. She immediately froze again, her spoon suspended halfway to her mouth. Whatever was happening, it had started with that collision in gym class, and Nathan was determined to figure out why. "I should just turn myself in to Principal Garcia," Nathan said with a sigh. He pushed his cafeteria mashed potatoes around his plate without eating them. 3 days had passed since the gym incident, and things had only gotten worse. "For what crime exactly?" Olivia asked, stealing a French fry from his tray. "Accidentally bumping into someone." "I don't know. Maybe on her planet, touching someone without permission means death by space laser." Nathan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "You've seen how she reacts to me. It's like I'm some kind of monster." Across the cafeteria, Zarlak sat alone as usual. She was carefully emptying packets of her alien nutrition gel onto a plate, arranging them in a precise pattern before eating. Occasionally, she would glance in Nathan's direction, then quickly look away when she realized he noticed. "Maybe you should try to talk to her again," Olivia suggested. "Every time I get near her, she turns into a statue. It's impossible." After school, Nathan walked to the public library. The school library had nothing about Proxian culture, but the larger downtown branch had created a special section after first contact 2 years ago. He found 2 thin books and a folder of printed articles about Earth's new alien neighbors. Finding a quiet corner, Nathan began to read. Most of the information was basic. Proxians came from a planet orbiting Proxima Centauri, the closest star to our sun. Their world was colder than Earth but had similar gravity. Their society valued knowledge and exploration, which is why they had reached out to humans once they detected our radio signals. One chapter caught his attention: Proxian social customs and taboos. According to the book, Proxians were extremely territorial creatures who evolved from solitary hunters. They valued personal space more than almost anything else. Physical contact was reserved only for close family members and life partners. Casual touching, like handshakes or pats on the back, was considered deeply inappropriate. That might explain her initial reaction, Nathan muttered to himself, but not why she keeps freezing every time she sees me days later. The next morning, Nathan arrived early to school and waited by Zarlak's locker. When she turned the corner and saw him, her body immediately went rigid. "Please don't run away," Nathan said quickly, keeping his distance. "I just want to apologize properly. I've been reading about your culture, and I know physical contact is inappropriate for your people. I'm really sorry about what happened in gym class." For a long moment, Zarlak remained frozen. Then, gradually, her posture relaxed slightly. "The contact was unexpected," she said finally, her translator device giving her words a slight electronic echo. "But that is not why I—" She trailed off, seeming unsure how to continue. "Not why you what?" Nathan prompted. Before she could answer, the warning bell rang, and other students began flooding the hallway. "I must go to class," she said, carefully moving past him while maintaining maximum distance. In biology class later that day, Mr. Hoffman announced a special project. "Since we have the unique opportunity of a student from another world joining us this year," he said, nodding toward Zarlak, "I thought we could focus our research projects on comparative biology. Each team will study how different biological systems might evolve on different planets." As Mr. Hoffman read off the team assignments, Nathan felt a mixture of dread and hope when he heard his name paired with Zarlak's. "This project counts for 30% of your final grade," Mr. Hoffman concluded. "So I suggest you all start meeting with your partners right away." After class, Nathan cautiously approached Zarlak's desk. This time, though she stiffened, she didn't completely freeze. "I guess we're partners," he said. "Maybe this is a chance to clear the air between us." Zarlak's 4 eyes blinked in an odd pattern. "Perhaps," she said quietly. "But there are things you do not understand about my reaction to you." "Then help me understand," Nathan said. "Please." The science wing of West Ridge High was nearly empty after 4:30 p.m. Most students had rushed home or to sports practice, leaving the hallways quiet and dim. Nathan had stayed late, working on research for the biology project in the library. He needed to understand Proxian physiology better if he was going to work with Zarlak. As he walked past the empty classrooms, a strange sound caught his attention. A soft, musical humming came from room 213. The sound rose and fell in patterns that reminded Nathan of whale songs he'd heard in documentaries, but with clicking undertones that no earth creature could make. He stopped by the door and peered through the small window. Inside, Zarlak sat alone at a desk, manipulating what looked like a floating ball of light, a hologram. The alien technology cast a blue glow across her features as she spoke in her native language, a series of beautiful tones and clicks that her translation device couldn't capture. Without thinking, Nathan knocked on the door. The sound echoed loudly in the empty hallway. Inside the classroom, Zarlak spun around. The moment she saw Nathan's face through the window, she went rigid. The hologram vanished instantly, leaving the room in shadow. Nathan slowly opened the door but remained in the doorway, not entering the room. He remembered what he'd read about Proxian personal space. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. "I heard singing. Was that your language?" Zarlak remained frozen for a few seconds, then gradually relaxed. "Not singing. Reporting." Nathan pointed to where the hologram had been. "To your family back home." "To my research supervisor." That surprised Nathan. "Research? What kind of research?" Zarlak's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Right top, right bottom, left bottom." Nathan had noticed this pattern when she seemed to be considering something carefully. "Please close the door," she said finally. Nathan did as she asked, but stayed near the exit, giving her plenty of space. "You may sit," Zarlak said, pointing to a desk on the opposite side of the room. Nathan sat down, watching as Zarlak seemed to struggle with some internal decision. The membrane at her neck fluttered rapidly, which he learned was a sign of stress or strong emotion. "I have been," she paused, searching for the right word, "dishonest with you and the other students." "What do you mean?" "I am not only a student in the exchange program. I am also a medical researcher, the youngest ever selected from my world." Nathan leaned forward, genuinely surprised. "But you're so young. I mean, I don't know how aging works for your species, but I am 16 orbital cycles by my world's measurement. Young, yes, but my abilities were detected early." She tapped the side of her head with a long, three-jointed finger. "My people occasionally produce individuals with enhanced biological sensitivity. I am one of these." "Enhanced biological sensitivity. What does that mean?" Zarlak hesitated again, then activated a small device on her wrist. The hologram reappeared between them, a spinning, complex structure that Nathan recognized as a cell. "It means I can sense things about other living organisms through brief contact. Cell structure, chemical balances, even some genetic information." Nathan felt a chill run down his spine as understanding began to dawn. "So when we crashed into each other in gym class?" "Yes, I received a biological reading from you." She adjusted the hologram, zooming in on a particular section, "and what I sensed caused me great concern." A hologram shifted again, now showing what looked like a cluster of cells growing in an unusual pattern. "I froze because I was processing what I had detected," Zarlak continued, her voice softening, "and I did not know how to tell you what I found." "Tell me what?" Nathan asked, though somewhere deep inside, he already knew the answer. Zarlak met his eyes directly for the first time. "There is something wrong inside your body, Nathan Miller, something that should not be there." The classroom fell silent. Nathan stared at the slowly rotating hologram of cells between them. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure Zarlak could hear it from across the room. "Are you saying I'm sick?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zarlak adjusted the holographic image with a gentle movement of her long blue fingers. The cluster of cells expanded, showing more detail. "There is a growth in your lymphatic system," she explained. "Here." She pointed to an area near the base of Nathan's neck. "It is small now, but concerning." Nathan's hand automatically moved to touch the left side of his neck. Now that he thought about it, he had noticed a small lump there a few weeks ago. He'd assumed it was just a swollen gland from a minor cold. "You're telling me I have cancer." The word felt heavy and frightening coming out of his mouth. "I am not a medical professional by human standards," Zarlak said carefully. "But yes, this appears similar to what humans call lymphoma, an early stage." Nathan sank deeper into his chair, trying to process what he was hearing. "This is why you kept freezing whenever you saw me. Because you knew I was sick." Zarlak's skin darkened slightly, what Nathan had come to recognize as their version of a blush. "On my planet, it is forbidden to reveal medical information without proper authority," she explained. "I was taught not to interfere with the medical systems of Earth during my stay. I worried I would violate your privacy laws or cause unnecessary panic. So you've been avoiding me because you didn't know if you should tell me." "Partly that, and partly because," she hesitated, "because I have never detected something like this before. On my world, I work mostly with plants and small animals. The complexity of human biology is overwhelming to my senses." Nathan stood up and paced the small classroom, trying to sort through his thoughts. Part of him wanted to dismiss the whole thing as a misunderstanding or an alien mistake, but another part knew Zarlak was telling the truth. "I need to be sure," he said finally. "I need to see a doctor." "Yes," Zarlak agreed. "Human doctors have machines that can confirm what I sensed. They will know how to help you. If you're right about this, Nathan said, turning to face her, you might have saved my life. Why would you even care about some random human? Zarlak's neck membrane fluttered. My people believe that knowledge carries responsibility. Once I knew, I could not simply ignore it. She paused, then added, also, you are not just some random human to me. We are classmates. Nathan almost smiled at how she said this, as if classmates was a sacred bond. I need to tell my mom, he said, pulling out his phone. She's going to freak out. Would you like me to explain to her what I detected? I have visual data that might help. Nathan considered this. No, I think that would just confuse things. I'll tell her I found the lump myself. He looked at Zarlak with new understanding. But thank you. Really. For the first time since their collision in gym class, Zarlak seemed to truly relax in his presence. Her posture softened, and her eyes blinked in a pattern Nathan hadn't seen before. There is something else you should know, she said. If my assessment is correct, and this is detected early enough, human medicine has excellent outcomes for this condition. The survival rates are very high. You researched human cancer treatments. Zarlak's skin darkened again. I have spent many nights studying human medical journals since our contact. I wanted to be prepared if I decided to tell you. As Nathan called his mother to ask for a doctor's appointment, he realized something had fundamentally changed. The alien who had been freezing at the sight of him had actually been working to save him all along. The waiting room at Dr. Patel's office was painted a soft blue that reminded Nathan of Zarlak's skin. He sat beside his mother, Karen, who kept nervously flipping through an old magazine without actually reading it. It's probably nothing, she said for the 5th time. But I'm glad you noticed it and asked to get it checked. Nathan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He hadn't told her how he really noticed the lump. How could he explain that an alien classmate had detected cancer cells through accidental physical contact? The nurse called his name, and they followed her to an examination room. Dr. Patel was a kind-faced woman with gentle hands. She carefully examined the small lump on Nathan's neck. How long have you noticed this? She asked. Maybe a few weeks, Nathan answered truthfully. It doesn't hurt or anything. Dr. Patel made notes on her tablet. We'll need to do some tests. An ultrasound first, and possibly a biopsy depending on what we see. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of machines, needles, and waiting rooms. The ultrasound technician was quiet during the procedure, which Nathan knew wasn't a good sign. If everything looked normal, they usually said so. 3 days later, Nathan and his mother returned to Dr. Patel's office for the results. The doctor's serious expression told them everything before she even spoke. The biopsy shows Hodgkin's lymphoma, she said gently. Stage 1. Karen gasped, reaching for Nathan's hand. Cancer, but he's only 17. Dr. Patel nodded sympathetically. Unfortunately, lymphoma can affect young people. The good news is we caught it extremely early. At this stage, the prognosis is excellent with proper treatment. Over 90% of patients in Nathan's situation make a full recovery. The doctor continued explaining treatment options, but Nathan's mind wandered. Zarlak had been right. Completely right. Somehow, her alien senses had detected what would have taken human doctors months longer to find without her warning. Nathan, did you hear what Dr. Patel asked? His mother squeezed his hand. Sorry. What? I asked if you have any questions about the treatment plan, Dr. Patel repeated. Nathan thought for a moment. How soon do we start? I'd like to begin next week. We'll need to schedule some additional scans first to make sure the cancer hasn't spread elsewhere, but based on what we've seen so far, I'm optimistic. On the drive home, Karen kept glancing at her son. How did you know to check for that lump, Nathan? You've never paid attention to your health before. Nathan looked out the window, watching the familiar streets of their neighborhood pass by. Just a feeling, he said quietly. At school the next day, Nathan noticed that Zarlak wasn't in any of their shared classes. Her absence continued for 3 days, making him worry that she might have gotten in trouble for revealing what she knew. Had telling him cost her place in the exchange program? Had she been sent back to her planet for interfering in human affairs? On Thursday, he got his answer. As he walked into biology class, Zarlak was there, sitting at their shared lab table. When she saw him, something remarkable happened. She didn't freeze. Instead, she simply watched him approach with all four eyes focused on his face. "You were right," Nathan said simply as he sat down beside her, careful to maintain the personal space she preferred. "The doctors found it. Early-stage lymphoma." Zarlak's neck membrane fluttered slightly. "I am sorry about your diagnosis, but glad it was discovered early." "You might have saved my life," Nathan said. "Thank you." For the first time, Zarlak's face shifted into what might have been a Proxian smile, her mouth corners lifting slightly while her skin took on a deeper blue shade. "On my planet," she replied softly, "we have a saying. Knowledge shared is a burden halved." As Mr. Hoffman began the day's lesson, Nathan realized something had changed between them. The fear was gone, replaced by something unexpected: understanding. The hospital room was bright with afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. Nathan sat in a large reclining chair, watching clear liquid drip through the IV tube connected to his arm. This was his final chemotherapy session after 6 months of treatment. The journey hadn't been easy. The medications made his hair fall out and left him tired and sick for days afterward. Some weeks he couldn't even attend school. But through it all, an unexpected friend had remained by his side. Zarlak sat in the visitor's chair beside him, her long blue fingers carefully turning the pages of The Hobbit. It was Nathan's favorite book, and he had lent it to her 3 months ago. She read human books slowly, savoring each page like it contained precious secrets. "I still do not understand why the eagles did not simply fly them to the mountain at the beginning," she commented, looking up from the book. Nathan smiled. "That's the most common question in human literature. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved." Dr. Paddle entered the room, clipboard in hand and a broad smile on her face. "Good news, Nathan. Your latest scans came back clear. No sign of cancer cells anywhere." Nathan's mother, who had been dozing in the corner chair, jerked awake. "Really? It's gone." "The treatment has been completely successful," Dr. Patel confirmed. "We'll continue monitoring with regular checkups, of course, but for now, I'm officially declaring you in remission." Karen rushed over to hug her son, tears streaming down her face. Zarlak watched the display of emotion with fascination. Over the past months, she had gradually become more comfortable with human expressions of feeling, though she still maintained her species' preference for personal space. After Dr. Paddle left, and Karen went to call family members with the good news, Nathan turned to Zarlak. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said. "If you hadn't detected the cancer so early, you would have discovered it eventually," Zarlak replied modestly. "Maybe too late." Nathan shook his head. "It's strange to think that a random collision in gym class might have saved my life." Zarlak closed the book and set it on the small table between them. "The exchange program ends next week," she said. "I will be returning to Proxima Centauri." Nathan felt a surprising sadness at her words. Over these months, their unusual friendship had become important to him. Zarlak had visited him after every treatment, bringing strange but beautiful alien flowers that seemed to glow in the dark. She had helped him keep up with schoolwork when he was too sick to attend classes. In turn, he had taught her about human music, movies, and slang that wasn't covered in her cultural orientation. "I'll miss our weird alien-human friendship," Nathan said, trying to keep his tone light. "It does not have to end," Zarlak replied. Her 4 eyes blinked in that particular pattern that meant she was about to say something important. "The Interplanetary Education Commission has approved a reverse exchange program. 5 human students will be selected to study on my planet next year." Nathan sat up straighter in his chair. "Are you serious?" "I have submitted your name as a candidate," she continued. "Your experience would be valuable to my people's understanding of humans. And she hesitated, her neck membrane fluttering slightly. I would like to show you my world as you have shown me yours. Nathan thought about everything that had happened since that day in gym class. How fear and misunderstanding had transformed into friendship. How an accidental touch had led to a life-saving diagnosis. How the alien who once froze at the sight of him had become one of his closest friends. I'd like that, he said finally. Though you should know, I'm still pretty clumsy. I might bump into you again. This time, Zarlak said with her alien smile, I will not freeze. As the final medicine dripped through his IV, Nathan realized that sometimes the most extraordinary journeys begin with a simple collision of worlds. And his journey was just beginning.